Okay, we're live in 20 seconds. 20 seconds. Okay, we're live in 20 seconds. 20 seconds. We're live in 10. We're live in 20 seconds. Live in
Might cut that out,
5,
Bishop.
4, 3, 2, 1.
Good evening, everyone, and what an exciting day it's been right here in Anderson, South Carolina, sitting on the Clemson Highway at the Panera Bread, getting ready to go to football practice, and we're just having a great time, just sharing and meeting people in here and sharing about what's hidden in plain sight. And so we want today to get the rest of the meat off of that bone that we left with Bishop Simmons last week. Uh, when we got started talking about Abraham and the life of Abraham and his journey, and God declaring that he would prosper. And we want to drop down a little deeper in those chapters today to deal with the fact that Abraham, uh, had a promise from God that he would leave a legacy for his children, and that's a wonderful, wonderful concept of leaving legacy. And we want to define today what actually that means, leaving a legacy, and uh, our attitudes that we need to pass on to our kids that will allow them to buy into the legacy that we leave. And so we're happy today to have Ms. Tasha M. Dyer with us and Dr. Craig Byfwood. And Gerald Rogers is not going to be with us today, but we look forward to him being back with us real soon. And so we're excited about this opportunity. Ms. Dyer, Dr. Byfwood, can you say hello to the audience?
Hello, everyone. I am excited to be here with you all today. Hello to our Rejoice 904 network, Facebook, YouTube, all of you all out. Just share this information. Let me say I'm excited. Let me say hello. Let me tell you to share this because today, you think about what we talked about last week, faith and finance, we're actually operating in big bank frequency. So I'm excited. I'm also excited because if you can't tell, I'm feeling so much better. So let me just go ahead. I know I was on here last week, but I was still kind of out of it. So let me just say hello to you all. Thank you. Calls, texts, prayers, reaching out, all of you all. I'm going to tell you, I had COVID pneumonia, and it was no joke. But I'm excited, to be here with you all. I'm just excited to actually dive into this conversation today. Because this movement is so important. We're talking about, financially educating and impacting 2 million families, guys. Get with it today, 2 million families. So we started it last week, like Bishop said. Hey, Bishop, glad to be here with you. And of course, Dr. B, the finance doctor, the one and only on the line. Dr. B.
Yes, ma'am, trade whisperer, soldier of health and wellness. We really do appreciate the way you have pushed through your situation. And we also appreciate your transparency because every time you talk about what you have encountered over the last 2 weeks, you are sending messages to individuals unaware. So we really do appreciate who you are and how you are taking advantage of this opportunity to show you just how strong you are. We already knew that. This is just you reminding you. So welcome everyone to our radio show, our radio broadcast, Hidden in Plain Sight. And I do want to say that I am broadcasting from outside today. We have to do what we have to do for our families, but understand that this is our radio family, and it means a lot to each and every one of us. So in Mr. Rogers' absence, Ms. Bishop Robinson, thank you for always being a steady leader for us. We greet our radio audience with love, light, wealth, and abundance, and we look forward to having this conversation.
Yes, and it is an exciting day all over the country. And I just thank God for this technology that we can be in different parts of the country and still come together and do this broadcast and not have to be real close. So we don't have to quarantine ourselves because we even though we look like we were in the same room with Miss Dyer, we are actually miles away from her. But we're excited to be close to her today. Yeah,
Um,
and
that's- um,
I enjoyed Mr. I enjoyed that song that you were singing before we came on the air. The devil thought he had me, but oh, I just couldn't keep it to myself. And so you were up every morning at 5 o'clock sharing when you started feeling better, and we're just so thankful that the devil thought he had you, but you've been set free by the modern technology that God has put that allows us to get better. So we're thankful and we'll praise God for that. And so today, Ms. Dyer, do you have our scripture? We have a scripture in Genesis, I believe it's chapter 13. And
absolutely, I have it.
Moses, when God came to him and told him to get up and leave his homeland and go into a place where he would show him, one of the problems that Moses had was that uh, Abraham had was that Abraham tried to take with him his family. And sometimes God has to show us how to prioritize what he wants us to do in relation to our family. And so he says, after dealing with a tough situation with the Pharaoh of Egypt, and Pharaoh catching him in a lie, he denied the fact that that was really his wife, and because he was afraid that the Pharaoh wanted her, and so he took for granted that Pharaoh was an immoral uh, king. Nevertheless, the Pharaoh chastised him and blessed him and sent him on his way. And so after that, this passage comes up where we talk about God says to Abraham after he and his God talks about how prosperous Abraham had become after leaving everything. Now he has so many sheep and so many lambs, so much cattle that he and his nephew could not share the same pastures. And he suggested to his nephew that he identify some additional land where he would like to dwell, and Abraham would dwell in some other place. And so here we are. God is saying to Abraham after he split up with Lot. Ms. Dyer, could you read that passage for us?
I have it right here, Bishop. So what it says is, the Lord said to Abram after Lot had parted from him, look around from where you are, to the north and south, to the east and west. All of the land that you see, I will give to you and your offspring forever. I will make your offspring like the dust of the earth, so that if anyone could count the dust, then your offspring could be counted. Go walk through the length and breadth of the land, for I am giving it to you. So Abram went to live near the great trees of Mamre at Hebron, where he pitched his tents. There he built an altar to the Lord.
Isn't that something? And so God says to Abraham that I'm about to give you something that will belong to you and your children. And the question that we want to address today is, do we consider what we have not only belonging to us, but also belonging to our children?
Mm, mm.
I don't hear that very much these days. That what I have belongs to me and my children, and maybe hopefully our children are not listening to this right now, because what we have for them. Sometimes we can't just show it to them right now. We have to wait till the appropriate time to give them what's theirs.
Well, Bishop, I think that when you really think about it, we've been, we're in a culture now where what we go out and what we get is what we think is ours. Like we live in a woe is me, what's in it for me, how can I get, mine? But even still, when you add to that, even our educational system, right? The educational platforms that we utilize for the most part, that degree has my name on it. So yes, I have an MBA, I have an MS, obviously Dr. Bythewood has a PhD. And when you think about it, that degree has our name on it. That's something that's not transferable, and so we push education and we teach them to go get their own. We teach them to get up and go get something, to go get a degree with their name on it. But you're right, and it's crazy how we don't really ever look at it from that perspective, that the word is saying that all of this is for you and your children, like your legacy. The word also tells us to leave a legacy for our children's children, but the paths that we pursue are about us and not that legacy or that generational, right? It's just not. And that's powerful.
Yes, it is, and I think if we consider it to be belong to our children, also, I think we'll be a little bit more careful about the decisions that we make. I remember the prodigal son came to his father, and he asked his father, "Give that which belongs to me." You know, he was asking his father for what was in his pocket that belongs to him. Give it to me. I'm getting ready to leave the house now. And so that was a mindset of some biblical times. And so we want to just talk about that today, the impact of considering when we make decisions about our money, when we make decisions about our investments, when we make decisions, because we think about our retirement, we don't think past retirement, we don't think past our leaving this world and what we'll leave behind for our children, our grandchildren, to deal with circumstances, ownership, uh, whether we have prepared some sort of foundation for them to operate from. You know, what are we leaving, Dr. Bythewood, in our culture for our children? Do we look past our retirement?
You know, Bishop,
Are
this
you
is a
there?
really, yes, I am. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, sir. I hear you now.
Okay. So this is a very interesting question because it really speaks to the balance that we have to walk between the two extremes. I met a young lady recently who is our business partner, and she lives in St. Louis. She's 25 years old, and she has a very young team. So she explained to me that she's happy that her team is winning and they're making money. But she said because of their youth, they're spending a lot of money. So she asked me if there were some things that I could say to her group to help them to manage money better. Now, I can talk until I'm blue in the face, but there's just a certain type of mindset that individuals have when they're at that age. So, yes, we have an opportunity to be able to share with young people. Here's a way for you to become your own bank, and here's a way for you to take advantage of your opportunity to have your own money. But at the same time, we need to understand that the youth is going to be the youth. And so some of the ways in which they're going to operate and spend is going to be based on their youth. So I find this subject very interesting because of a piece of my background that our radio audience may not know about. When I was in my 30s, I was the financial education director for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So I was asked to speak to these gentlemen and to get them to see the value of tax management, the value of money management, the value of taking ownership for your account rather than letting your agent do it. And I found that the ability to have a lot of money was based on their youth, but their inability to be able to understand what I was saying was also based on their youth. So I've always had a very interesting take on sports because the younger you are, the better you are, but the worse you are with your ability to be able to manage money. So what we need to do is understand that we have to teach our children the balance of understanding how it is to recognize the fact that the song says, God bless the child that has his own. But while you have your own child, we need to help you manage your money and understand that there's some things that come from the older generation that's going to be of value. So again, it's about walking that balance between the two extremes.
Let me ask you something, Dr. B, because that's a very good point and a very good perspective. And so in your opinion, like when you think about that, you just mentioned the inability to understand based on their age. Do you think that when we get older, per se, that is really a shift or something that's happening? Because a lot of times we see, and what I hear from older generations is, I don't trust banks, or I'm gonna put my money over here, or I keep it at home. Or, that's our generation now that's actually unable to retire, because whether they were misled or they just didn't properly, put their money up, or, you know, that's the generation right now who's being recommended to get a side hustle at the age of 65. So is it age, or is it the fact that we've really been misled when it comes financially and nobody's taught us? And so therefore our younger generation can't, you know, because they weren't taught, because the older generation didn't know, you know, it's just kind of like a never ending cycle that has to be broken.
What a great question, Miss Dyer. And I want to answer it by giving you a cultural answer and a biological answer. The cultural answer is this. We're actually watching history repeat itself, because there are individuals who are under the sound of my voice who are old enough to remember the Great Depression. And so the Great Depression created a distrust of banks, which made individuals do exactly what you just said and want to find scenarios that were alternatives. However, there were very few alternatives because the bank, in my opinion, had a strong grip on our infrastructure. The first time you and I met, I said to you that, to me, the Be Your Own Bank is about the fact that banks are very adept at controlling infrastructure. Now you fast forward to 2008, and you have a group of individuals who feel like the centralization of banks is an issue. So they decide they want to start, and these are young people, they want to start their own decentralized movement, and that led to everything we see now in cryptocurrency. So I know for a fact, Ms. Dyer, that there are young people right now who distrust banks as much as older people, but what they've done is they've created an alternative. I know individuals right now who are in their 20s, and they don't do any banking whatsoever. What they do is they put all of their earnings, all of their profits into cryptocurrency. Then they transfer it over into stable coin so that it will maintain its value when they decide what they're going to spend or decide what they're going to do. So both scenarios are the same. They just came from two different situations. So endless cycle, no, I would say a scenario where we now are creating alternatives when before all we had was the distrust. And that again speaks to how important this movement is, because we have an opportunity to A, teach people how to make their money, B, teach people how to manage that money. Now, here's my biological answer to this wonderful question. Prefrontal cortex. Prefrontal cortex. There is a chip that literally exists in our brain, which allows us the ability to be able to process the long-term implications of our decisions. And it is called the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is not fully developed when you're between 18 and 21. So that means that some of our youth, although they're doing an outstanding job of finding alternatives, they don't always have the scientific and biological capacity to understand what the best decisions are, which again makes this movement so important. Makes this movement important that we teach these skill sets, teach these perspectives to our children, and also to our neighbors' children, because there are individuals in our movement who are young, individuals in our movement who are older, and we have to continue to create this movement, this momentum of getting them to understand the way these processes work, and it makes our society better.
You're muted, Bishop.
That is wonderful information, Dr. Byfoot. And what came to mind was we are collecting, we're saving, we're developing uh, possessions to give to our children. And when you talked about the changes in how we handle our money, you know, with PayPal and all these, and Bitcoin and all these different forms of money and banking, I'm thinking about, you know, older folk. Should we be concerned about developing the legacy that we want to leave to our children in the format that's acceptable to them? Because many times we build up companies, we build up different funds and trusts and whatnot, and it's not in a format that our children want to deal with. For instance, when I was doing some work in Jamaica and in the Hill country, and they were having problems over there because they didn't have enough pork, because the farms that were being passed on to the children didn't want it. And so they were selling the land. They didn't want to be pig farmers. They didn't want to be goat farmers. They didn't want to have sugar cane. That's what their parents left them. That's the form of the legacy that their parents left them. And so uh, we have to be. I think that we have to be mindful of the format that we leave. The format we leave the legacy in, whether or not it's palatable to our children, and whether they really want to receive what we have to leave behind.
I think something else to kind of add to that, because that's a really, really important perspective. And you know, you see it in movies, you see it in things, and it's like you don't ever really kind of dive into it. But another interesting statistic is that, you know, that kind of really adds to that is over about 80%, somewhere in there, don't quote me exactly, but I know it's somewhere in there, are first generation millionaires. So a lot of people think, you know, people that don't have or are in lack or, you know, can't even fathom being wealthy, they believe that people who are wealthy is passed on from generation to generation. And that's not always the case. The reality is most people are first generation, and that's because they're willing to have, they got that work ethic. So I think part of the problem is we're supposed to give our kids that silver spoon. We're supposed to, right? They're not supposed to struggle, right? They're not supposed to, you know, because you hear people all the time, well, you had this. Well, that's what we're supposed to do. You know, we have to get in a position where we start highlighting and rewarding, you know, what's supposed to happen, where people feel that, okay, I got it, where people don't always have to feel like they have to go out and start over, where we're actually enhancing, you know, what I leave you, you need to enhance it, not always having for us to have to be in a position and start over. So when you think about what we're leaving our children, I think it's double folded, like a double-edged sword, because one, we're not really leaving it. Two, we do need to make sure it's something that they're going to want to pass down, because those family businesses and things, that's just not the way people do things like that anymore. And so you're right, breaking up the land, doing all these other things, breaking up companies, kids want to go out and find their own. And so that's that same mental state, like, I got to go get it. I got to be the one to go get it. When all you really have to do is, if we change that culture, we change all of that, we can begin building on, adding to, you know, enhancing, and stop starting over at each generation.
So I'd like to comment on both of the statements that were made by my esteemed colleagues. First, let me start with Bishop Rolison's point. Bishop Rolison, you do not realize just how accurate you are with the comment about the farm. And let me give you a real life example, snatched from the headlines of my life. I've actually never shared this with my BYOB family, but for the past 8 years, I've been on a board of directors of a company that is taking advantage of a law in the state of Wisconsin that says every farm must be family owned. You're not allowed to have a corporate farm in the state of Wisconsin. But what farmers in Wisconsin are dealing with is the fact that the children are not interested in being farmers. So you have all of these elderly farmers that have built their entire lives on these farming communities, both in dairy and cheese, but they don't have any family members that want to continue. So what my company did some years ago is we started purchasing these farms and managing them, sort of the way Be Your Own Bank. Banks were not allowed to purchase shares or own shares. So, for example, let's say Citibank. Citibank was not allowed to own shares because of the Great Depression. So they became Citicorp. And then Citicorp owned Citibank. Citicorp could do whatever they want. So it's that model where we're acquiring farms based on this situation, basically specifically designed with what you said. So very accurate on that, Bishop Robertson. Now, Ms. Dyer, let me say something about what you just said. I think it's important that we recognize that the starting over piece. You began this conversation by accurately mentioning that you and I have degrees. And yes, we do. And the old model, I say it all the time, the old model means that when our children get into their youth, they've got to start over. They've got to get their own degrees. They've got to get their own jobs. So literally anything that we've accomplished doesn't necessarily pass on to them because they've got to start over. That's why I love this movement. That's why I love what we're doing. Because just because you're in the house with individuals who are younger than you and they're listening to you, they've decided to recognize that a cartoon is talking about cryptocurrency. They've decided to retire at age 20. So by just the fact that they're in our environment, we're giving them something way more valuable than a degree. Wait a minute. How could a person who is a product of the academic say something like that? Same reason why drug dealers never use their own product. I am a dealer of education, but I also understand the frailties of it because each family member must start over and do their own. But what we're passing on is a legacy of being able to be in control of your own economic destiny. God bless the child that has his own. And that's what we're passing on.
So let me put some perspective. Bishop, before you take it back, let me put a perspective on what he just said, because I chuckle, and I know many of you guys, if you haven't been tuned in on every broadcast, you know, many of you all might not know what he was saying. And I think it's profound. It really fit perfectly in there because children do what you do and not what you say. So when he mentioned about recognizing in a cartoon, you know, cryptocurrency, what happened is my daughter was actually watching a cartoon. And in the cartoon, they kind of backtracked to trading. Well, like really it went all the way back to bartering. And so it ended up with the cartoon character on the charts. And he was literally sitting in front, he went from bartering to sitting in a computer. It just kind of showed the evolution where now he's sitting in front of computer screens, actually trading in the markets. The same thing we do. And so what she did is she came and got me and told me that whatever the name of the cartoon is that she was watching, she told me that they were doing the BYOB. You know, she was like, look, such and such, they're doing the BYOB. So she's able to recognize and understand that there's more than just, you know, how she can make money, because he literally it was money pulling out of the computer. And it's basically the same skill set that we teach. And so that's what Dr. B was actually referencing and kind of pulling out, is the fact that because we've made a shift and because we now have a lifestyle where we can just pull money out of the computer, you want something, you go get it, you log on, go take some trades. And, you know, this is the life that we have, that my daughter was able to recognize that. And so that's that shift. And so ultimately we're leaving skill sets, knowledges, desires, you know, understanding is really starting to already be passed from generation to generation, just from making a decision to be your own bank. All right, Bishop, I just wanted to bring a little clarity and understanding, you know, kind of to what he was referencing.
Exactly, Ms. Dyer. That was wonderful. And both of you guys, I'm just excited just to be able to just draw from you guys. And when you were talking, I thought about the fact that my generation, you know, we always talked about we want to retire with at least $1 million, access to $1 million in the bank. But, you know, I found out after I made $1 million that $1 million wasn't that much, is not that much money. And if we leave our kids $1 million, will they know how to handle it? Because I know for a fact you can spend $1 million in a few hours, it'll be gone. You know, it don't take no days, it's just a few hours. But especially when these kids see these different cars and boats and travel trips they want to take and whatnot, and that $1 million is gone. And so, you know, what are we doing to educate our children about how to handle cash that we might leave? Because we're saying that they don't want to necessarily work the same business that we operated. And I mean, because I read in a magazine last year that the number one group that was committing suicide in America were in the Midwest, and they were young 40-year-old white males. white males that had inherited, as Dr. Byfoot spoke up earlier, had inherited farms. And farming, they had observed their fathers and their grandfathers running the farms, but watching and observing was very different from actually having to make the decision. And they couldn't get anyone to work the farms. They couldn't get any products. They couldn't. They people they thought they could sell the products to. Our past president had a moratorium on selling pigs to China and whatnot, and so they found themselves frustrated because farming wasn't as easy as it looked. And so, if they don't want to run the business that we have, and we leave them cash, will they be able to handle the cash without losing it all in taxes and inheritance fees and whatnot?
First
So,
of all, when did farming ever look easy? I don't know.
huh?
You say farming look easy. I said, when did that happen? When did it ever look easy?
I
That's
mean, you're just riding in the truck, sitting in the truck, and you're not really making any decisions, not having to pay the bills, not having to get the supplies. And it does look easy. Somebody else is doing it. You just give
uh,
your benefit.
Ooh, no, no, no. I'm like, no, but any business, whether it's farming or, running a company or anything, a lot business is transactional. I mean, that's the reality. Like business is transactional. So whether I'm running a farm or whether I'm running a company, maybe I own a company, whether it's a tech company or, like my daughter owns a business, right? She's a business owner, but yet she has to be there, my granddaughter jokes about it already, because she's in the beauty industry. So a lot of the things that she does obviously is the lashes, the facials, and all of that. So my granddaughter at 3, obviously she talks about trading as well. But she also talks about, I'm gonna make people beautiful. Like my mommy own a shop. I'm a put the lashes on, So the little things you hear them saying, but then you get that same conversation. Why is mommy always at work? Why is mommy always at the shop? It's the weekend. She knows she's not at daycare, but so why is mommy not home? Why does mommy have to be there? So I do think that they start understanding that it requires some labor, like it's going to require. And so when you look at the generations that's shifted and changed, one of the individuals that does one of our shows on Fridays is called Bridging the Gap. She's a millennial wealth connector. And, she was just talking about, which I've said it before, but to hear someone of a younger generation really make that emphasis, what do we honestly have to show for the hard work that we've done? And I'm not just talking about that farmer or that family member, maybe that person just doesn't want to do that specifically, or maybe they do, or they really didn't understand it, or they weren't taught financial resources and things. But honestly, if you look at us as a whole, because most people aren't wealthy. So most people are living check to check. And so, matter of fact, if you look at some of the crashes and the financial problems we've had within our economy, $500, a simple $500 a month would have, kept a lot of things from happening and kind of made a shift in a lot of families. So the reality is most people aren't wealthy. And so what you're seeing is a generation coming behind us that's looking at us is, you guys work really hard. You guys been in the field all day. You always at work. What do you have to show for it? You're telling me to do this. You're telling me this is what I need to do. But what really do you have to show for it? So, and that's where it comes in. You're telling me to do something, but you don't have anything to show for it. You don't have anything to leave me other than some memories. You can leave me a house that I need to fix up because you bought into the American dream of home ownership. So, just like when my grandparents passed, what did they leave? They left, they have 2 houses, but both of them needed some severe work, severe repairs. And it wasn't just like, oh, I'm gonna leave Tasha a house. It was, we're leaving y'all a house. And the only reason I got dibs in it is because my mother had already passed, right? Because it was left to her 4 children. So the reality is what do we have? And I gave my rights up. I just walked away from it. I'm not doing all that with a house that need all that work. But what is it that that they really have to show for all the hard work that we do? What do we have to show for it? So why would you want to come in and step behind and see, we just did it. They told us to do it, we did it. They told us to go to school, we went to school. They're struggling, they're living check to check. They can't figure it out from that perspective, these retirement plans that's supposed to be promised, but yet they told us to do it. And our generation was that generation, you know, we did what we was told and not what we wanted and thought. So we just did it. The generation behind us is like, whoa, what's in it for me? I need to see some results. Granny and them did it, y'all did it, and you don't have anything to show for it. So you really think I'm about to come do the same thing? And they don't work on a job for 30 years. They're not dedicated like that, you know. And then what are we teaching the younger generation? Let's even go behind them. We're teaching them participation. Everybody get a participation trophy. Everybody concerned about everybody's feelings. You know, we need to spread the wealth and not rewarding hard work and dedication. And so what are we really doing? Then once again, Dr. B, as you say, this is why this movement is so important.
Well, what that sounded like to me was society sucks. So why do I even need to wake up tomorrow? No, I'm just kidding. So
But it does.
let me provide a little additional insight here. We're talking about what we're passing on to our children. And I think we should also be very honest with ourselves that we can pass on things that may not be in their best interest. And I'm going to give you a very accurate, true example that has happened in my life the past 24 hours. So I'm going to assume that my children aren't listening to this radio broadcast, even though they should. I'm going to assume that my baby's mother is not listening to this radio broadcast, even though she should. So here's the situation.
He tried to be politically correct.
And there's probably some snitch on the line that's waiting to send his transcript directly to her. So here's the situation. My youngest daughter was offered an opportunity to play basketball at a prep school. That is a blessing. So the total amount that it costs, minus the scholarship, is the amount that needs to be covered by the family. So what the ex is doing is she is doing what she's supposed to do. Let me put myself in a position where I can do this for my child, and let me talk to the coach. Let me talk to the school. Let me talk to individuals that could have funding. And the narrative that she's saying is, I don't have the money to just write a check. How do I know that? Because she's telling me that's what she's saying to everyone. So I made this suggestion. Let's keep doing what we're doing, but let's say it without saying what you don't have. I'm basically a talk with the finance doctoring her. So the response was what the response was, but I kept saying to her, the reason why we want to be careful with talking like that, because the child can pick up on that energy. So we never had a conversation with the baby child. Neither one of us had a conversation about the money. So this morning I asked the baby child, well, how do you feel about going to Pennsylvania to this prep school? And these were her words. Radio audience, she said, I just get this energy that you and mom don't have the money to pay for it. Hello? No one said that to her, but the energy is so strong that she feels it. So that is why I am so big on the fact that we have to watch our energy. We have to watch our words. How many times have you, listening audience, been on a profit call and one of you will say something about what didn't happen or what you don't know or what you haven't been able to do? And then the trade whisperer will gently guide you into the energy of your affirmation. So the point I'm making is that we need to understand that when we start walking in the energy of can't afford, our children are picking up on it. And all we have to do is recognize, A, the solution's already here, the Be Your Own Bank movement. And B, we have to walk in the affirmative at all times because it impacts our children in ways we don't see.
Powerful.
Absolutely true, Dr. Bytewood. That positive energy is so important, not only for our children, but in our businesses, positive. How are you? How are you? People come to you into your place of business, you make them feel like you're excited that they are there. and pass that on. Sometimes I go into some businesses and some restaurants, and the guy that meets you at the window is all frowned up and snatching your money and looking at you real ugly. It messes your meal up. And then so that's something that's very positive. But when Miss Dyer spoke about culture, I thought about when I was in college back in the 80s. Uh, Miss Dyer probably wasn't even born then. And
Was.
uh, uh, back in the early 80s. And one of my dormitory mates was a guy from India. And I noticed that he was majoring in accounting. And I would invite him over to have some lunch or something. And we would begin to talk, and he would share with me that most of his family members were accountants. And noticed that people who had that last name, when I went to hotels who was doing the accounting, was last name was Patel, and all the Patels are accountants. And now in 2000, one of my members was a analyst for one of the major banks, and she reminded me that at night they send all the accounting work to India, and all the accounting for that major bank is done in India. And so it wasn't just cash, but it was skill, it was appreciation for performing a certain type of work that they passed on, and the math skills were passed on. My sister, who's an engineer, she said, I think our daddy for uh, teaching me algebra. I said, well, he only went to the third grade. How did he teach you algebra? And she said, well, he always gave me these word problems, and I learned to figure them out uh, as a child growing up. And when I got into high school and college, I was it always came to me real easy to do the accounting, to do to do the algebra and whatnot, and the math skills, because those kind of questions were put to her as a child. And so you're right, Dr. Bytewood. You got to set that atmosphere for success. And with my friend from India, that success was has been instilled in family traditionally, where if you're a Patel, you do accounting.
You know how powerful that is, Bishop? I'm gonna tell you what I'm thinking about as you're speaking, because you're talking about culturally. So let's be real culturally. Like, let's get real for just a moment. One of the things, and I even operated under this, I think we all did. And I used to joke with my children, or they would hear me say or talk on the phone, 18-30 rule. 18, you got 30 days to get out, right? And I think I think I've shared that before. But that's but without even saying it, how many people in our culture believe that our children are grown at 18? Believe that it's time for you to start figuring out life. Believe that at 18, it's time for you to get it together and you should have it figured out. And then some of the responses I hear, now that I have conversations with people about that, some of the responses that I hear is, well, at 18, I had to do it. At 18, I had to figure it out. At 18, I had to get a job. At 18, but the reality is, like you say, you can pass on a skill set, or you subconsciously, without even realize it, pass on debt, pass on lack, pass on hardship, pass on these things, because we'll complain about society or what society doesn't allow us to have, or what society won't allow you to do. But what are you really passing on to your children? Like, what are you really giving them? Are you giving them opportunity? Or I feel like I invested in them, right? I invested in my children for 18 years. I invested in you. Do you think that I'm going to take a 401k or something and at 18, I'm going to just throw it outside? I'm going to be like, good luck, and throw it against the wall and just be like, go figure it out? No, I'm not going to do that. You're going to still nurture that investment. And so I believe that if we start treating our children like our investments, like, our legacy, just like they know that they're going to be reared up to be accountants. What are we pouring into our children other than go figure it out? go figure out life. I really feel like statistically, these are my statistics. I feel like we give them 10 years. We put them 10 years behind when we do that. We put them, and then even when you talk about going to college, one thing I've always taught my children is, what do you want to do in life? Like, what is it you want to be? What do you want out of life? And now let's backwards plan. Let's work towards that. And another thing is, because I've even heard my father say it, all my grandchildren have gone to college, or they're in college, or, and I'm like, okay, tell me what that means. What does that mean? You got to understand, for my generation, and he might be watching, we've talked about it. So, y'all throwing shade and dimes like at people. I'm just, if he watching, hey daddy, but is the reality is that's what we say. And it's like, he's proud of that. And it's not that I'm not proud, but the reality is what are you proud for? What are they in school for? What do they want to be? What do they want to do? Like, let's get past the fact of I enrolled, because even as a recruiting commander out here, one of the things I saw is the attrition is so high, especially in our culture, even with the ones that do go to college. Some of them go in just because they were told, but they don't have no help getting there. But then when they get there, they don't stay past the year. And it's just like, why? Because that was the goal. College was the goal, not the degree, not the education, not what they want to do with their life, not why they're in college. Like, why are you even there? Now, I'm not saying don't go, but why are you there? What is it you want to accomplish in life? And until we as a culture shift that, until we change that, until we shift that narrative, like, what is it you want out of life? And let's backwards plan and stop kicking them out at 18. Go figure it out. We're repeating cycles of starting over. We're repeating cycles of always having to be at the very beginning. Whereas, as you just stated, that other culture, they're sending them, they're prepped, they understand from the time that they're a child what's required of them, that they're going to add to, they're going to build on top of their family name. They're going to build on top of that legacy. That's embedded in them. We're telling our kids, guess what you got to do at 18? Go figure it out. Go start your own legacy. Go start. It's like we just cut them off. Like, you're on your own now. You might have my last name, but go get it. You're great. Go get it. We got to stop that.
Lord have mercy. You're absolutely right. I tell some of my friends and they disagree with me. I said, well, biblically, girls married out of their father's house.
Say that again.
Girls married out of their father's house. They didn't leave home until they were going.
We lost you, Bishop. We lost you. There you go. You back. You back.
Yeah. Before she left, when she left that house, whoever was taken out of that house had to deal with that daddy. And I'm sure that's the way myself and Dr. Bife would handle it. That boy's got to deal with us. And so certainly, but that's culture. That's again culture. And unfortunately, we picked up on this culture that comes from, the plantation somewhere where we just leave, you're gone. Nobody know what happened to you. All we know is you're gone. And so we need to give them skill. We need to give them some money, and we need to give them opportunity to continue in business. And so I think that's the kind of legacy that God describes here for Moses. Moses had sheep, he had land, and he had cash that God gave him as a legacy for his children. And I think we see all of that right there in that passage. And sometimes they mess up, as Lot did, even after they leave. And Abraham went down there to rescue Lot, because Lot had gone down there and got down there in Sodom and messed up. And he had to leave everything he had down there, and it got burned up. But Moses didn't throw him away. Moses didn't say, well, you messed up, now you're on your own. No, not Moses, I keep saying Moses, Abraham. Abraham took him and nurtured him and got him started again. And hopefully Lot had learned from his mistakes.
Amen. And that's what we have to be able to do. We can't throw them out. You got to nurture them. Dr. B, you trying to chime in?
Yes, I am. One of the themes we've had this entire call has been about balance. And before I get into that point, I've received many letters, texts, and emails from our more ghetto listeners who wanted me to say baby mama. So there you go. You got it. So in, ter-
I'm
in
sorry.
terms of finding this balance, here's something I had to be real about. I'm the consummate girl dad. I grew up an only child. And so I waited until I was older to have children. And so one of the things that I did was I treated them like princesses. I served them, I catered to them. And when they got older, I was able to see that I didn't always equip them to be able to do things on their own. So I'm backtracking to a certain degree and making them have responsibility that I never implemented. I didn't realize it. I thought I was, being the perfect dad, but being the perfect anything requires us to understand both sides of the equation. So if I had to do it over again, I would have been better at teaching them all aspects of life rather than just the ones that they're responsible for, like school and sports and their individual chores.
I think that's all of us, Dr. B, because even you guys hear me tell my story all the time, about being the oldest in a single parent household. My mother was terminally ill. So you hear that story all the time. But on the backside, it comes when you have children, and then me being in the military, deploying, being separated from them from different times, it comes with a certain, I call it a guilt cover, or, or something to that effect, because now I'm overcompensating. I'm doing too much. My children have too much. They receiving too much. And so it's like my youngest, she's catching it because of the age gap, because I'm requiring more of her, but at the same time, she's more covered because I'm in a better financial situation. It's a tough thing to try to balance out, because you want to make sure you want to make sure they never experience anything you did. But then at the same time, it's like, how do you make them responsible? And so you can make them productive citizens in life, in society, as they grow up and go out. So it's just a way to find a balance. But, I've met your daughter, so I'm gonna shout you out, because, I think, as a father and take care of his daughters the way you do, I gotta salute you.
I certainly appreciate that, Ms. Dyer.
My hat's off to you also, Dr. When I met your daughters, and I can tell that you spoiling them and doing wonderful things for them. They're gonna be wonderful ladies that contribute to our society because of what you poured into them. And so I salute you uh, and commend you for the great work that you're doing as a single dad. And I've been in those shoes a little bit, and Mr. Rogers and I were together last week, and we were working on a little project we were working on, and we were riding in the car on the expressway, and we were talking about our girls and talking about the energy that we have to put into them and allow them to try to allow them to make some some errors and be there to help them because of the way we spoil them coming up. And so we anticipate the phone calls that we get from time to time. So start off with daddy, daddy, and that's a distress call. And so we know that
I
when
get
we
it. Yeah.
yeah, that's a distress call. When the call start off like that, that's normally a good call starts off. How are you? How was your day? But when it doesn't start like that, when it starts with daddy first, then we know that it's time to be daddy. And so, uh, we try to pass on them skills for dealing with disappointments and uh, and stress. Because stress is something that's.
Bishop, we losing you.
Are you?
It got dark and the computer started moving.
Oh yeah, I'm trying to move the computer around. I'm
Oh,
right here.
I was like, what's going
My
on?
light person is messing with the light. That's a
Oh,
little better.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's better. Go ahead.
yeah. And so the sun's not out. It's been overcast skies today, but we're thankful just to be on here today. But yeah, we have to do some things to give them life skills of dealing with difficult people. Because even when you are the employer, uh, you're going to have some difficult people that you have to deal with, and helping them, trying to bring them up, that they would acquire the kind of personality that will allow them to be an entrepreneur and be in the situation where people would want to work with you on in your business. And so that mindset is something that we have to instill in our children as a legacy, being able to deal uh, with people and work with people, and people are happy to help you make your millions.
You're gonna help them make their millions. So
Yes,
we're gonna help them to get theirs as well.
yes.
I gotta, Dr. B, I know Bishop is moving on with the conversation a little bit, but I have to share some of this love in the chat, that you are receiving. I salute you, Dr. B, and I mean, I raise my hat to you, Dr. B, as I wish I had a dad with just a fraction, a fraction of your fatherly qualities. Thank you for sharing. So yeah, I just wanted to share a few of those with you, because we hear you all the time on the Talk with the Finance Doctor, and we're talking about leaving legacies, and what are we leaving, our families and our children. So you got a lot of love pouring in right now, and I just wanted to share that with you. I don't know if you want to give you opportunity to respond to that, but I just wanted to make sure you knew the love that's coming in through the chat.
I certainly appreciate that. And I was wondering if they could send those comments directly to the aforementioned baby mama.
We're gonna leave her alone today, I'm telling you. No, I'm just playing.
Yeah, I
So
might want to visit Tampa one day. And I won't be able to do that without Sniper being one of the buildings. Okay.
oh, that's funny. That's funny.
I certainly do appreciate that love. Thank you very much, everyone.
So, all right, what were you saying, Bishop? I try to change the subject. I know we're about to close out, but I want to make sure I answer your question.
Well, you had to get me while it's hot, because it's there and then it's gone. I was one of the early COVID victims, and it kind of took some of my memories, so I'm struggling with
They
that.
told me 18 months. Oh my God, it could take 18 months to come back.
I was in recovery when you called me in December 2019.
I remember.
I was still trying to get it back, and it's still some foggy days. So, just pray.
Ooh,
and
that fog is real. Trust me, I understand. I'll be sitting there thinking sometimes, and I'm like, what did I just say? What was I about to say? Now that fog is real.
It's a real thing, yes. And so we just have to equip our kids to be able to work with people, is what I was saying, I think. And because we can't teach them to be selfish and teach them that they can be an island unto themselves, because if you're gonna be wealthy in business in America, you got to be able to work with people. If you're gonna be a part of BYOB, you got to be able to do your part and to play your role, whatever that may come out to be. You may not get an opportunity to pick what role you want to play, but when your numbers call, that's I'm getting into football mode now. When your numbers call, you got to be able to play that particular role, the next man up.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think this conversation was needed today. I think this conversation was extremely important today, because I mean, the reality is we have to, really put ourselves in a position to where we shift. If we want change, it has to be intentional. It has to be intentional. If we're going to do what's required of us, if we're going to live in our biblical principles, and we're going to walk out this faith and finance, if we're going to shift and change the world the way that we know that we are with this movement, then it has to be intentional. And if you want any part of it, for our listening audience, if you want any part of that, if you want anything for you within yourself, you have to make an intentional decision. As we kind of talked about today on our broadcast, you can see that, society is not supportive of this, because our culturally is not the norm. And so I want you to expect some resistance. I want you to expect some rejection. I want you to expect you having to be bold, confident in your decisions, and understanding what you deserve and what is for you and what's coming. Because you have to just really just step out and say, you know what? I'm making a decision that my legacy is done starting over. My legacy is that stops now. And I am the first one, and we're going to build on that. And you're going to have a mindset to be able to press forward and a mindset to be able to get it done. And so that's where it's going to change, and it's going to change with you. So I'm declaring, I'm calling all of you out. I'm calling everybody today, make a decision that we're going to operate in this big bang frequency. Make a decision that you are a change agent. Make a decision that we're going to live out our biblical principles and the anointing that's on our life. Remember, we've already discussed this. We talked about it for an hour. We're anointed for wealth. So let's make a decision today that we're going to walk it out with intention, and we're going to be very intentional about what we do. And so that's our time, ladies and gentlemen, that's our show. But I still want you to make sure you get a copy of our book, Be Your Own Bank, Hidden in Plain Sight, our website, BeYourOwnBankMovement.com. Reach out to us, share this information. It's streamed on our YouTube, right? It's also Spotify, but this is too important. Make a decision. You are a change agent. You are the one that's going to shift your legacy. You're the one that's going to change the narrative. And make sure you join us. Find out what Be Your Own Bank is all about. Be Your Own Bank Movement on YouTube. Go subscribe, and make sure you're plugged in at 9 p.m. tonight. Come find out who we are and what this movement is all about. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I love you. I love you. I love each and every last one of you all. So to my colleagues, we thank you for joining us once again. We'll see you at 9 p.m. Be Your Own Bank Movement on YouTube. Subscribe, 9 p.m. I will see you there. And reach out, BeYourOwnBankMovement.com. We love you. And ladies and gentlemen, that's our show this week.